Hey folks, today we're going to talk about 10 common challenges people that are homeless experience and what support workers can do about it. The first and primary objective is to focus on the lack of stable housing. Because without a stable place to sleep or store belongings, people face constant uncertainty and there's exposure to all sorts of elements and violence and theft. So the idea here is to help people you're supporting navigate housing programs. Maybe provide some case management services to assist, advocate when necessary, and continue to try and help people get in applications for things like long-term supportive housing and vouchers. Also, you can continue to promote stable housing by going to community meetings in your place where you're living to advocate for more housing that is affordable to the people that we work with the supports necessary to help them succeed. All right, second common challenge, limited access to basic needs. So I want you to imagine if you're in a position of homelessness, how would you go about accessing food and clean water and hygiene products and restrooms? Because that can be really difficult, especially if you aren't familiar with the array of services that are out there. We want to make sure that people know which are the best homeless service organizations they can go to take care of those needs, and even where there's public facilities where they can take care of those needs. So do things like partner with local organizations, student groups, faith-based groups, concerned citizens to create things like care packages and things like hygiene kits and things like food parcels for people. You also want to think about establishing consistent outreach services where people know how they can access essentials. Bring the essentials to the person. All right, the third common challenge, mental health issues. So while the majority of people with a mental health concern are actually housed, many people experiencing homelessness do live with severe and persistent mental illness, often untreated. We also see higher rates of things like depression and post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety, and those are often worsened by living on the streets. So what do we want to do? We want to try and facilitate access to mental health clinics, crisis centers, and even try to integrate our services with mobile mental health clinics to offset this impact that people are having at navigating the system. We also want to provide emotional support and offer all sorts of access to things like trauma-informed therapy and therapists who understand the realities of homelessness. All right, the fourth common challenge, substance use and addiction. And yes, most people who are experiencing substance use disorder are housed, but those who are experiencing homelessness and have a substance use disorder experience some unique challenges. It's often a coping mechanism for trauma or stress or mental health struggles. And substance use, though, can create a cycle of dependence, stigma, and barriers for housing and employment. So we want to implement wellness promotion. And that is everything from focusing on pathways to substance use recovery programs, detox services, etc., right through to looking at ways we can keep people alive until they can access those resources. We also want to make sure that we're working on building trust and offering referrals to people in a way that is low barrier for addiction treatment programs and doesn't require sobriety as a precondition for service. Fifth area, common challenge, physical health problems. So think about this, exposure to harsh weather, malnutrition, lack of medical care, lack of getting a really good night's sleep. This can lead to all sorts of health problems. So collaborate with mobile health clinics, much like the mobile mental health clinics. Bring those services to people, integrate with your other services. Don't keep them separate and siloed. You also want to help schedule appointments. Maybe accompany people when they need accompaniment, and advocate for treatment plans that accommodate their particular living situation. It doesn't make sense that the treatment plan can't be applied to someone in a shelter or living in the car or living outside. So the sixth common challenge is violence and victimization. People experiencing homelessness, especially certain population groups like women, 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals, these and others are at higher risk of things like theft, assault, and exploitation. So we want to identify safe shelters, domestic violence support programs. We want to educate people about how to report violence safely, and we want to help people create personal safety plans. This helps prolong their safety, promote their safety, and help support their safety in the community. Seventh is lack of access to employment opportunities. Because without a permanent address, sometimes without identification, sometimes without clean clothes, often with struggles of transportation, finding and keeping a job becomes hard. So we should offer things like workshops that are focused on resume building, job applications, interviews. We can also partner with organizations that provide work-friendly clothing, transportation assistance, and employment supports, especially for people experiencing homelessness or exiting homelessness. All right, the 8th common challenge, stigma, is real, and socialization. There are plenty of negative public attitudes towards homelessness, and that can cause people to feel isolated. It can cause people to feel dehumanized, and can cause people to feel hopeless. Discrimination can limit people's ability to access services, to access housing, and to feel accepted. So we should go about trying to create things like peer support groups, where people experiencing homelessness can build supportive relationships with other people who engage this work from a very particular angle of empathy. And we should use community activities or events to foster positive interactions and help people rebuild their self-esteem and rebuild, as necessary, their entire social networks. All right, 9th common challenge, legal issues and criminalization. This is huge these days, as more and more jurisdictions lean towards criminalization of homelessness, citing of tickets, making it illegal to sleep in public spaces, making it difficult to panhandle when it results in fines and maybe even arrests for unpaid tickets. These practices generate legal barriers for people accessing housing and other resources. So it's good to collaborate with organizations like legal aid clinics and help people you're serving address things like outstanding fines and warrants and court cases. Some communities even have homelessness diversion courts or substance use diversion courts. On the side, you can go about advocating for decriminalization related to homelessness-related behaviors at the local level, and you can connect people to lawyers specializing in housing and homelessness rights. Finally, barriers to social services and benefits. So you don't have that ID, that's a barrier. You don't have transportation, that's a barrier. You don't have knowledge of available resources, that's a barrier. So we want to help program participants obtain essential documents, things like their identification and a birth certificate. And that's often going to require step-by-step support and partnership with other local agencies that specialize in that. Walking people through the process of things like applying for government benefits, also hugely important. So we should advocate for the people that we're working with when they're experiencing barriers in accessing social services and benefits. We want people to get access to the resources to which they're entitled. So, there you have it. 10 common challenges experienced by people that are homeless, and some ideas for how people in the support side of the equation can respond to each. These challenges often intersect. They're also difficult to break without sustained support and a focus on permanent solutions to homelessness like housing. So we always need to make sure that we know what the challenges are and how best to support the unique people that we're working with to help them achieve that ultimate aim of leaving homelessness behind. Thanks for watching.